So, today's drawing of the week, or the concept of the week, is um, hands and feet. Now, it's really important to get hands and feet down because they are complicated, but not as complicated as you might think. It just like any of the things that we draw in class, once you break it down to simple shapes and then add more and more detail, it becomes not as difficult of an undertaking. So, one of the things I want to mention to you is art history. For instance, Da Vinci's sketchbooks and Michelangelo's sketchbooks, which are still available today to the public, are full of drawings of hands and feet studies, um, different placements, different shadows, different lights. So yesterday, I had you practice your hands and feet. So do, 5 different placements of hands, 5 different placements of feet. And I did this too. Now, all of the homework that you guys do, I'm also doing. So keep that in mind. And I decided that I wanted to do hands, and I drew some feet as well. And then I was dead set on my personal touch that I wanted to add to the hands or the feet was I was going to have a hand like this twirling a piece of hair because it's a habit I've had since I was really little. So I just thought, that might be a cool drawing. That might turn out really cool. So I did a couple sketches of it, and then I decided not to go for it. So, and it was because I did that practice study that I realized that there was something else I wanted to do more. So this is my study, a piece of my sketchbook ripped out. You can see I tried a hand like that. I tried hands that were holding, two people holding hands. This is the twirling hair that I tried. And that's kind of just a relaxed hand. So I did 5 different studies. I did them in pencil, outlined them in Sharpie just because it's what I do. Something similar. If you decided to do the practice, then yours might look something like mine. Now, after working on it, I realized that I really liked the holding hand. So that's exactly what it ended up using. So I'll explain more, but I actually, you can see how I actually started doing the twirling hair picture and then I erased it. So let's get started. Okay, so here you see me putting my mid-tone all over the paper, just like I taught you guys last week. So here you see me starting to sketch some basic shapes. I'm keeping my knuckles, my fingertips looking like a very blocked out. You can see how I put the circles for the knuckles, and I'm kind of just making cylinders and rectangles for my finger shapes because I don't want to get that detailed. I don't want to spend my entire time on one finger and then find out I don't like it and have to erase the entire thing. So I'm doing this. You can see I thought maybe about putting my chin in the picture, and I'm adding some hair, and then kind of just mapping out my composition, just like I've taught you to do. Map out your entire composition before you start to add hyper detail. And I think I'm adding a sleeve there. And then I decide that you can see me decide really quick that I don't want to do that anymore. So again, this is in the graphics pad, so you can tell how it's a little bit different than last week when I was using actual charcoal on a sketchbook. I also want to alternate between the two because I think this is easier to see, but at the same time you get that real element if I'm working with an actual sketchbook. So I'll switch off and on. I think they're both beneficial for different reasons. So now you can see I chose the holding hands sketch that I practiced. I just really liked working on it. I kept wanting to add detail, and you remember how I always emphasize draw something that you want to draw. So even though I was kind of set on the first one, I discovered that I liked working on the other one a little bit better. So you can see me doing kind of making an outline. I created my composition. I drew cylinders and tubes for the fingers, and here I am adding a little bit of background shadow, a little bit of regular shadow. I started out with my mid-tone, but now I'm adding the major shadows that I see to kind of get it to take shape. Sometimes another way that I've heard about creating art is imagine that you're looking at it through a camera lens, and at first you're really, really zoomed out, like everything's very blurry, and then as you start to add detail, it becomes sharper and sharper. So what you're looking at right here, you could think of this as kind of the out of focus image that we are adding more detail to make it more real. So you can see the hand I'm drawing. I have a shadow going on here. Now, I found this from a photo on the internet and then added a lot of shadows. So sometimes I draw from real life, sometimes I draw from something else I like. You can see me messing around with my computer. And again, I've got my mood music on. I had this on when I was drawing. This one didn't take me that long. I know that the one that I did the other week took me about 2 hours. This one took me about an hour. But again, it's sped up about 600%. So now I'm zooming in, adding more detail. You can see how I'm adding the shadows and then sort of blending it in. And I'm turning those tube shapes that I made of the fingers into more defined shapes. So I'm adding the wrinkles in the hand. I'm adding the shadows I see. Sorry about the noise, guys. They're doing work on my apartment building. So there I am with a couple more shadows, and I'm doing that. And now, even though looks like I am adding white, I'm not. That's actually an eraser tool. So I'm erasing back to the original paper just like you guys are. You can see me adding skinnier lines, fatter lines, and you do the same thing with this with shading with your finger, just like I taught you to do the last week. Or if you're using pencil, if you're not using charcoal, if you're using pencil, same thing, except instead of adding a line of charcoal and blending with your finger, you're just gradually adding lines close to one another. I'm adding a shadow on the arm. I think this is what's called artist stalling. You can see how I kind of didn't want to start on the finger. So I was thinking, oh, this is going to be hard. I don't want to start it yet. But then I started to work on it. Adding some highlights, adding some shadows. It's all about getting your picture more and more in focus. And I apologize for the videos that have been coming not first thing on Monday morning. Like I said before, I have had issues with processing. My computer's a little bit slow, so it should be getting better. All right, so I want you to notice something really quick, the subtleties. So you can see I just added a little bit of a shadow on that hand. And since I did, all of a sudden this goes from being a flat shape to being a bone, like a hand with bones in it. You can see just one line can make a difference. Adding that implied form. Now, there's something that I've noticed you guys are doing is sometimes you get hyper detailed, like almost too detailed, to the point where it almost looks silly. you can just create a suggestion of something. So you'll see that when I add the nails here in a second. I didn't really outline the nails to a point where they were this heavy black line. I just sort of created a simple line because I don't really need to have super defined fingernails on this particular drawing. I'm just adding the suggestion so you know that a fingernail is there, but it doesn't have to be the strongest line ever. It's very light, it's just barely there, and you can see how I just did that. A lot of times you guys will focus on something that isn't as important to the whole picture, and understanding that judgment is part of sort of developing your craft, knowing what to include and what not to include. Just like last week when I was drawing the jewelry box and I decided not to include the candle. Even though it was there, I just felt like I didn't want to put it in there. Because, I thought it would maybe take away from what I wanted to focus on. Same here. If I got a really heavy black outline on the fingernails, then you wouldn't be able to see some of the other things. You wouldn't be able to see what I really wanted you to see. Now I went in and I'm adding the darkest color. So you can see that I'm really putting a shadow where I want the shadow to be. Now I am trying to create a hand holding of a man and a woman. So a lot of times when I'm erasing these shadows, it's because I want the man's hand to look a little bit bigger. So I did that. I made his fingers look bigger by adding these big white spaces. And you can see I'm going in with my eraser again and I'm adding white lines for like knuckle shading. So I think I'm almost done. I'm going to zoom out here in a second. I think that's me shading the thumb. Alright, there you go. You can see how it's really starting to take shape. Now I think I really wanted to, again, show you that this was a man's hand, so I think I'm adding hair in the arms right there. It's the little details that really make it look realistic. You can see how his thumb's poking on the side. You can see the definition in the hand of the woman. I think I'm adding just a little bit more shadow. And then I sign it. I think I didn't like where I put my signature, so I did it again. A few more shadows. So there you go. I am all finished. I like how it looks. Like I said, go back and read the description. Make sure that you add a personal touch to your hands or feet drawing. And I wish you the best of luck. As always, email me with any questions. Thanks.